Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, March 19th. Today is day 165. So day 165, I had an interesting day today. I'm still here in Washington, D.C. I began my day with a breakfast with some high capacity individuals here in Washington, D.C., some international ambassadors who are committed to working on peace in the Middle East. It was encouraging to see leaders that are committed and that see what's happening and that are willing to value human life and the dignity of all of humanity. Palestinians in Gaza, seeing them as worthy of safety and security and protection, just as Jews in Israel should also live without fear of attack, live without fear of anti-Semitism. That's what peace should look like. It seems so simple, right? That the human dignity of all people should be honored. And yet the atrocities continue in Gaza, and every day there is more and more death. It doesn't sound like it should be all that radical of a concept, the value of human life. And yet here we are in the 21st century and in the United States, that equal value of human life, and forgive me for being crass, but the valuing of the color of one person's skin more than another, we still seem so far away. So far away. And yet that's why the work that we do is so critically important. So I do have some updates from the past day or so. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, called the looming famine in Gaza a dire crisis, adding that now is the time to eliminate all barriers to the full and sustained delivery of humanitarian aid. U.S. Aid Administrator Samantha Power called the situation a horrific milestone and implored Israel to take immediate action to put an end to this mass and preventable suffering. The White House and the U.S. is deeply concerned about a UN-backed report indicating imminent famine in Gaza. U.S. President Joe Biden said that he told Prime Minister Netanyahu to send a team to Washington to discuss ways to target Hamas without a major ground operation in Rafah. And Italian Prime Minister Meloni said that her country opposes an Israeli ground offensive in Rafah. That's the southernmost city where the vast majority of displaced people are residing. Prime Minister Netanyahu said during a parliamentary committee session that we all need to stand united against the United States position that they shouldn't go into Rafah. Earlier, he'd said he'd made it clear to Biden that Israel is determined to operate in Rafah to complete the destruction of Hamas. His office also claimed that out of respect for Biden, Israel would allow the White House to share their ideas, particularly in regards to the humanitarian aspect and enabling a planned population withdrawal and assistance to civilians. So that's that population, withdrawal. What does that mean? There's no place for the population to go unless they're removed outside of Gaza, and the fear would then be that they would never be allowed back in, the forced displacement of Palestinians, which is another version of ethnic cleansing. Oxfam and Human Rights Watch sent a joint memorandum to the Biden administration detailing Israel's alleged violations of humanitarian law, including with U.S. weapons and blocking U.S.-funded humanitarian aid, which they say necessitates the immediate suspension of U.S. arms transfers to Israel. The health ministry in Gaza has said that the death toll in Gaza is now 31,819 Palestinians, the vast majority civilians, killed, and 73,934 injured since October 7th. Conversations about a potential ceasefire deal have continued in Qatar. They have said that they are not close to a deal, but Doha remains hopeful. They also warned that the Israeli operation in Rafah would set back negotiations and would result in major destruction and atrocities that have not been seen in the conflict before. A Palestinian official familiar with the negotiations said that Israel has not yet delivered its answer to Hamas's offer. In the U.S., Senator Chris Murphy, the top Democrat on the Senate subcommittee focused on the Middle East, called on Israel to immediately pause military operations and the looming famine in Gaza. Just remember that when famine strikes and people start to die from hunger, once food arrives, it is too late. And the concern is that there will start to be an exponential number of deaths being reported. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken will visit Saudi Arabia and Egypt to discuss the right architecture for lasting regional peace. I just wanted to close by letting you know I had quite a few meetings, this week already. I think it might only be Tuesday. But today I had the privilege of being hosted as a guest at the South African Embassy. And I sat on a panel next to the esteemed South Africa Minister of International Relations, their foreign minister, Her Excellency Naledi Pandor. She has been a courageous voice crying out for justice for Palestinians, one of the leading voices involved in the International Court of Justice, calling for an end to what South Africa has identified as a genocide in Gaza. And I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I heard her say today. Minister Pandor from South Africa said, "We have shared a common struggle for freedom and justice and self-determination with Palestinians. And the relationship between post-apartheid South Africa and Palestine is very strong because of our common history." And she went on to talk about how Palestinians stood alongside of South Africans during their own struggle for independence when many in the world ignored their cries. And she said that they, being the Palestinians, were there for us in our own international struggle for justice, and we will stand in solidarity with them. All human beings deserve universal human rights and self-determination. When Minister Pandor was asked if South Africa was being isolated internationally because of their advocacy at the ICJ and their support of ending what they see as being a genocide in Gaza, she responded and said, "There's been a response that is seeking to be punitive against South Africa, but the world needs to understand the critical role that South Africa plays as a strategic partner, and that any action that seeks to diminish our role is unwise. Rather, partnership with South Africa should be sustained and supported." Minister Pandor went on to say that in the United States, we believe in freedom, human rights, and democracy, and that those principles are the very lifeblood of this great nation. And they have been foundational to our sovereign national interests. These principles are the foundation upon which the United States was built. And might we now include all people in those principles, freedom, human rights, and democracy, in supporting ceasefire now for all people in Gaza, in Israel, throughout the Middle East, for the sake of those whose very lives are at risk, but for our own sake and for the sake of peace in the world.